The infamous first moving zone. What you do in this zone specifically is going to determine how good you do in the rest of your game heavily. So how do you make sure you're doing what's right in this part of the game? Well, first off, let's go over what you want to achieve or focus on in this part of the game. All the mats you've saved up previously in the early game and mid game, this is a zone where you're going to utilize that the most, because this is the most mat intensive period or zone of the whole game. It's the longest and largest moving zone, so obviously you're going to have to build the most because you can't just keep still like you did in all the other previous zones in one certain spot. It's the longest and largest. And obviously in the first moving zone, there's not going to be really any old builds to follow as there would be in like later moving zones. Because if you've had like 2 or 3 moving zones and then a zone pulls back through those moving zones, which is like usually what happens, it's pretty likely, then you're going to be able to use old builds and save mats, but you can't do that in the first moving. Therefore, you almost always have to build yourself in or use something that you already have. So since it's the most mat intensive part of the game, the most mat intensive zone, then obviously if you like do save your mats more, it's going to exponentially make and like increase how good you do at the game. Because think about it, if it's the most mat intensive zone for a lot of people, like they're going to go from 1k mats each to like 500 mats each. If you somehow use only like 200 mats each in the first moving zone, that's usually the most mat intensive, you're usually going to do so good in the rest of the game because you have so much more mats on average than other people, because you didn't use many mats when other people use heaps of mats. Now also in the zone, you usually want to always finish up like ending on like a highish layer so you're ready for second moving, but I'll explain more about that when I get to it. At a point this early in game, there's really no need to focus or worry about high ground or low ground. Obviously high ground is going to be good sometimes in the early games and first moving, like when you have like god mats as a team game mode and you have some god rotation maybe and you just have a really easy high take, like sometimes it's fine. Like as I say in a lot of videos, like this stuff is a general guide, but in Fortnite it's so random and stuff, and sometimes stuff can be a good idea that you previously like thought about and trained yourself to think is bad. So you always have to be really lenient and understanding that it's just a general guide. But I'm just trying to push for the general idea that in first moving you don't really need to worry about any power positioning or like high up layers or low ground layers. You just need to be focusing on how many mats you're using, like saving as much mats as possible and setting yourself up in a good position, like layering or even like anywhere like where you are in the zone for second moving. That's what you need to focus on in first moving. Now, how you play first moving is heavily going to depend on the current situation you're in, like how much mats you have, how many heals you have, like if you have rotation, if there's elevation in like a certain part of the first moving, if like the lobby's dead or not, or if like where you just are, where you're positioned. But this is a really good tip. What you should be doing is aiming to have 1k mats on average overall at the start of first moving. So say you're a solo, you should have 1k mats on average around that, and then duos 2k and then trios 3k overall. If you have that many mats, you know that if you play in-game decently, you're going to be able to get to the end and do good. If you have like around this mats, you can have like 10 or 20 less, like just around this amount of mats is good. If you have that amount of mats, then you want to play the very standard way of playing in-game, which I'll show you later in some VODs. And now with this tip, what you can do is if you have like a decent, like actually like decent amount less builds than 1k average overall, then you know that you're actually going to have to go for like a unique like weird play to like save some ridiculous amount of mats or get a refresh quickly, such as like using an old tarp and then like coming up behind them and then 3-2-1ing them, or just like running along low ground even. It's like sometimes you can go low ground, it might be good if you want to save mats even though it's not the most optimal thing you could do. Or you can look for someone fighting and then hit the third party, because usually if you're just going on like a 2v2, you bad mats and the other team with good mats, obviously they're either going to run or just destroy you. So you almost always have to go up behind someone in like a tarp like I said and get a kill that way in a surprising way, or you go in third party someone's fight. But yeah, like I said, you don't want to be doing this because it's risky obviously. Like the optimal way is to have at least 1k mats on average overall at the start of first moving, so you can play and not have to fight anyone for the first couple moving zones until you get kills later, because it's way more easier and safer to get kills later than at this like first and second moving zone. Now this part of the video is going to explain Deadside on the first moving zone and what you can do to use it and why it's good. So we're actually going to hop into a quick VOD for this. Okay, so now we're in a game for an example, and basically what happens is on half-half, you'll notice how half the zone is in zone, half the zone isn't in zone. Well actually, is actually a bit more percentage of zone than out of zone, but whatever. And basically, most of the lobby are going to rotate in before zone even starts closing in, so they're all going to go there. And the rest of the lobby aren't going to be able to rotate any further into zone because there's going to be a bunch of people here anyway. So basically, all of the lobby are going to be in this yellow area. Then boom, this yellow place, there's all the people, and there's just an area here where there's nothing. And what you can do for this is basically on this rotate, if you wanted to, if it was a good idea, you could go from in here with the group of people and cut out to the right and use that little area to rotate kind of freely. The thing with that though, you'll notice is that once like zone goes a bit, as you can kind of see now, up front is like, there isn't really any dead side anymore. So the dead side only really exists for the first half of the zone, because what happens is everyone on that position that they were in before the first moving went, from there, they all just hook it front side and as close and as far as possible, which is always at the very front, because as you know, zone is like a circle, so at the very tip of the circle is going to be the furthest point, so it all goes close to that as possible, and then it just spreads out evenly and Deadside doesn't exist anymore. But you can still use Deadside for the first half, which is good, and that can usually save you mats, especially if that area actually has old builds and like houses or terrain, because this is kind of dodgy at this rotation, because imagine you do rotate out here, you're probably going to get server focused unless you go really late, but still it's not as good. Okay, now I'm going to cover the elevation aspect of endgame. Now, even when the zone, the whole first moving zone, even if it was like completely level, completely flat, you still want to play a very high layer, especially if the game is like really stacked. The less people in first moving, the like less important it is to play a higher up layer. This is because imagine you're on low ground, like on the very bottom layer, and you're in a super stacked lobby first moving with like 40 players, and they're all above you because you're low ground, and they're all above you, building and tarping and making heaps of mess above you, right? Imagine you get to the end of first moving zone, like low ground will be fine, and you'll like find it like okay in the first moving, but once you get to the end and there's still like 35 people alive, and then next zone maybe pulls to right or the left, and there's like all these people above you, and maybe it goes up to the left or up to the right, or even if it stays flat, it's bad, which I'll explain. And even if there is no elevation to the left or the right, then there's going to be other teams on low ground, right? Because the first moving is so massive, there's going to be multiple teams on low ground. What's going to happen is, like, say you want to go right at the end of first moving and you're on low ground, but then there's two other teams on low ground to your right. You're like, okay, well, I need to change the layer. I'm going to go up right so I can get above them and go forward. But then you're low ground, so there's going to be a guy above you, and you're like, okay, I need to change that again. There's going to be another guy above you, because the whole congestion of the lobby is above you. But imagine you're in a really high layer, then if you want to go right or left, there's going to be hardly anyone. So your rotates are going to be completely free and really easy to do. What I will say though is, if you do find yourself on low ground at first moving early in endgame, then instead of just pausing like halfway through the end of first moving, what you want to do is keep going so you're in the very back of the last like circle that it shows for first moving. So you're in dead side. So instead of being high up so there's no one, you're actually on dead side so there's no one. But it's still better to be like higher up for multiple reasons. But yeah, if you're at that point, when the next zone goes right or left, you actually have this little area that doesn't have many people, so you can freely use it to change layers and rotate easily. But yeah, please don't find yourself in that situation anyway. Now, when first moving pops, instantly mark the end of first moving, so you can kind of roughly tell what the elevation endpoint of it is going to be, so you can kind of like choose and see how many layers you're gonna have to go up or down. But the thing with that as well is, you notice you're marking only the end portion, and it can be like a massive hill in the middle and then it goes down. So you need to really just look at a cone and see what's happening, and like exactly identify and like memorize and picture what the exact zone is and what your rotate will be. It's actually really useful as well if your whole team like looks for the cone. Like as an IGL, you can be like, okay guys, look at the zone, see what we're gonna do, just visualize the area. It really does help them. And this should be easy to see what your rotate is, because you should have positioned yourself up in a high layer on half. And with these massive elevation changes with hills, you really want to clear them as like early as possible. So if there's like a massive hill and like 10 boxes away from you, you want to clear it before then. Never clear it when you get to it, especially. And the reason this is bad is because this happens because say there's like 10 teams going directly towards a hill, and they're all going to have to eventually go up or they're gonna die. When they all get to it, imagine the people that are near the bottom, right? They're gonna have to go up, and then everyone starts having to go up, and they all converge into one little area and then suffocate and just get in a massive muck up and die. So you definitely just do not want to be anywhere even near the hill when you're above it or even before it. So yeah, just clear it as early as possible when also being safe, because obviously you don't want to clear it so early that you can easily get chopped down and die. Now another quick thing I actually want to tell you guys that is very, very important is your rotation, right, and how to use it. Because first moving is when you're going to be using your rotation the most. Because like I said, first moving is the most mat intensive zone. So if you have movement and you clear first moving, the most mat intensive period in the game with rotation, and don't use mats, you're going to be so far ahead of the whole lobby in terms of mats. Like if you had 2 pads, for example, you would pad the very start of first moving, land, box up, maybe just look back and shoot a couple of people while you wait for someone to get on your back again, and you pad and you land front side. Imagine that you've literally built like 3-4 boxes, like maybe 20-30 builds for the whole first moving, and after that point you're going to be so far ahead of everyone in terms of mats. Now I just want to go through a quick couple in games, like a quick VOD review on different games that include different things of like different team game modes, solos, different elevations, all that type of stuff. So we're in first moving now, and as you can see in the bottom right here, see this Deadside here. In this zone, it would actually be good to use Deadside because as you can see, there's like trees and some builds and stuff. You can actually see Jinx and Ishes starting to use it. If you were like positioned over here, or even like any over here, you could go around there and then cut out to the right and just save so many mats that way, and you'll probably come up here until you have to start building and tapping in. But yeah, if I was any team here, say this team for example, I'd probably wait another couple seconds, not go last and then go along here all the way down here, then come up here, and then once I got probably to here and the zone kind of gets up here a bit, now from this position here I'll probably start going up a bunch of layers until I'm like at least like this layer here. So let's see what Jinx does. You notice actually they didn't tap the whole way, right? So first of all, they covered half of first moving with just doing that Deadside rotate and then boxing up here, and then they waited until zone got like decently ahead and they sprinted all the way saving mats and then probably box up like here. Then from there, probably what I do is go up like 3 or 4 layers once I get close to zone. That's like a zone where you've saved so many mats. Even though it's a bit more risky, they save so much more mats. And they get in a good position for next zone. So you see here, he didn't even go down for low gun. Like a lot of people might actually go for low gun now, but he knows it's probably not even worth it. He just wants to stay up on like a decently high layer. Like this isn't even that high, it's like 2 layers up, but you can kind of just tell if you're in this position that this position is like high up enough, so when second zone pulls, everything's easier to rotate from. And now this is going to be a solo game actually. People are just instantly going to clear this mountain so early, which is good. Also another good thing to note is you can notice that Deadside doesn't exist. Fourth zone was like that, right? And then all the people come into there, and then it's like this congestion here, and then zone goes that way, so it's just evenly spread, and this zone doesn't matter. This zone doesn't exist. But the strategy I'll probably do is, first of all, just say what you do with a hammer, because almost everyone in this lobby is a hammer, because they're so common. Obviously, you'll just use your rotation, rotate forward, maybe up here, and then box and wait, and then rotate up, and then wait and box, and then rotate here. Just so basic, boring stuff, you know? But in solos, if you don't have a hammer, or you don't have rotation, you really need to be thinking about ways you can save mats. So in solos, a lot of the time in first moving, you're just going to be running around like parkour on builds, which I said before. Like imagine you have this guy here. I'd probably like in the next zone, you could possibly like rotate a ramp backwards and hold down and slide down here, but then you want to stay on like a highish layer so you can get up the hill. I'll probably slide down here, go here, build a box, wait for zone to get ahead a little bit so there's like people up there, and then you just ramp up and clear it like really early. And notice how I was saying I would clear it from here, which is way before you actually get to the cliff itself. Basically, once I ramped up here, I'll probably just sit and wait again until about now. Like you don't want to let zone get fully on your back, because you don't want to be mucked up and like sat with these people that are all desperate on backside. But yeah, but if I was sitting here about now, before zone gets too close to me, I just run along, and here you kind of see like a nice path. You gotta find these like nice paths that like you can just run along and not build too much so you can save mats, especially on first movement. Then I'll probably just get to front here and then box up here. You might be like, this is low ground, but what's going to happen is zone's going to open up obviously and keep going down since you're on a hill, so it doesn't matter. And then basically I'll just get front here, box up, and then wait until the exact same thing happens when zone gets kind of close to me. And then sales boxes up here, like I said, I'll go now, and then probably just place a couple floor builds to get up here, and then maybe just finish here on a metal box, like nice high up here. And then if zone goes back up there, you know you have an easy rotate, and if zone goes anywhere else, you still know you have an easy rotate, and you like didn't even tarp that zone at all. You just ran, boxed at the right times, and you cleared the hill early. Yeah, just saying about like the ending of first moving, like this type of layer here, like just see how easy that is to like rotate any second moving zone compared to someone down here. Like imagine zone went that way and you're on low ground down here, or even here, that would still be rough as well. But look how easy it is from up here.